Well, hello from the Adoption Thought Bunker. I thought it would be really appropriate to come on and kind of just unpick some of my thinking around what's been going on over the last 24, 48 hours. And it's really unusual to see adoption focused in on all across the BBC, on their website, radio, morning show, every news bulletin across the day highlighted the crisis. And I think, is it fair to call it crisis? Well, I think, yeah, it is actually. I think when you've got 1,000 children being returned to care out of such a small cohort, how you measure that and how you kind of interpret that is really complicated. But we know that children are being failed by the adoption system. Or is it the adoption system? Well, yeah, probably. But is it the nature of the support that families are getting? And we know that, the adoption barometer came out recently and it said 42% of families are in crisis. That's a damning statistic in terms of where adoption people start from adoption, with hopes and aspirations, and find themselves in crisis. And it's a crisis that pulls them into a really murky world that is really difficult to navigate. And so I think that's one of my takeaways, is that we've got families who are dragged into a system that isn't necessarily the system that they navigated through. So especially when people reach crisis and they're looking for support, and that support is often launched out of the crisis. So that could be that you've gone to school and the school are picking up on stuff, that it's a police call out. You're not getting post adoption support workers coming out to talk to you. You're getting children's social care, social work, and we know that if it's legitimate to call that in a level of chaos, again depending on where you live and the sort of postcode lottery. But having professionals come in who don't understand the nuances of adoption in terms of the nature of the adversity that children experience, the position adoptive parents find themselves in, and this real disparity of them in a system that's kind of wired for a different community with different challenges. And I think that what, for me, I see is that causes these huge levels of missteps, both professionally, but also, if I'm being honest, I think adoptive parents sometimes are a bit sideswiped by this and don't really know how to navigate a system that is focused solely on child protection as opposed to child support. And this causes the chaos. And I'm speaking as a parent who's, I'm not speaking academically, I'm not speaking as someone who's looking at this from an, through a microscope and going, yes, it must be terrible for people. We know as a family, we've experienced all of the stuff that you saw on the TV program in different ways and at different times. So all of that stuff's legitimate. What response there is, the DfE response is quite peculiar in that they sort of said, yeah, we get it. But I think that reflects that actually the DfE's got very few levers to pull in terms of, it cannot make local authorities do anything. It can't dictate how they form their services. It can give them broad legislation, but how that legislation is worked out, and you see that in the postcode lottery, that different local authorities, different professionals interpret that legislation a different way, and people get a different response. And if you go on my Facebook page, there's an awful lot of conversations around the quality and nature of social work that people are getting. Some getting good, some getting atrocious. Some people just really unprepared to kind of go back into that world, and because it is a pretty bleak, grim sort of environment. So does safeguarding professionals need to understand adoption? Well, yeah, absolutely they do, but I think that it remains quite a niche area of practice. I think it's hugely misunderstood even within social care. I think that it's the narrative of happily ever after still holds really, really strong. So there's loads to unpick, and I've got lots and lots of thoughts about loads of different aspects for it. But sort of the thing that I came away from, which is a bit grim, really, is I thought, well, is it a bit grim? You decide. Is this the nail in the coffin for adoption? Adoption's struggling. We all know that. The reason we went to RAAs was because there wasn't enough children coming through the system to justify the system. And that is tailing off. We're down to around 3,000 adoptions a year. Will this, for all of the work done around You Can Adopt, will this undo that? Now, I think probably, yeah, actually will. I think it will be. I think we'll look at yesterday and think that's when the decline became irreversible. And I'm not necessarily sure that's a terrible thing. I think children need permanence, children need belonging. Is adoption working? Well, yeah, for some children it is. When children get a lot of things, and I say that as a family where, we've all gained lots and lots of things, but some of us have had to lose an awful lot to get that. Anyway, it's just me thinking some things. I hope you have a great weekend and stay well.